Welcome to Lift and Make Lighter. I'm Tom Telford here in the Lone Pro offices, Farmington, Utah. And I'm sitting with the founders of Become More, Wade Roberts, Tyler Elmore. Thanks for having us.
Heck yeah.
Thanks for having us.
This is awesome. I got to start off with a story, just for some context, if that's okay. So years ago, I got this wild hair to do a triathlon. So I had no idea what I was doing. I had just lost a bunch of weight and I love to ride bikes. And so I'm thinking triathlon. Yeah, I just need to add the swim. So I'm going to show up to a triathlon at Yuba, of all places, Central Utah. No idea what I was doing, but I show up, sleep in my car, get up the next morning, and I venture into the lake. And the gun goes off, the triathlon begins. And very quickly, I learned I suck at swimming. In a bad way. It was a tough day, a lot of humble pie. But that day, Tyler won the triathlon.
That was my first win, by the way.
It was meant to be, apparently.
Yes, it
but
was.
And I'm sure I was last. So last place and first place. And that's really where my relationship story begins with Tyler, which is I approached him afterwards and said, Tyler, man, I stunk at that. But I'm committed to be healthy in my life and I need some help. So you were kind, you know?
You were driven. I enjoyed it.
You were kind. And I think that without diving further into that, the long story, short story at this point is we end up in a pool together. I get a bunch of, feedback. Your feedback basically was, I can't help you. You stink so bad.
I don't know about that.
I'm going to introduce you to a real swimmer, Wade Roberts.
There we go.
And Wade became my swim coach. And so these guys are amazing humans. And it started there for me. They were willing to coach me up and teach me, with this desire to be a little healthier in my life. Shortly thereafter, Tyler actually became my chiropractor and nutritionist when I went through a brutal phase of life where I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue, Epstein-Barr, told by doctors, stop being an entrepreneur. It's going to kill you. Your stress, all that was going on. It was tough. And the short story is Tyler resurrected my life. It's true. He put me on a regimen that other doctors had not even mentioned to me, but that changed my life. And so I credit Tyler Elmore with bringing me back from the dead to a degree. And that changed my life, my family's life, my young family at the time, young kids, young married. And so to be here talking and to talk about the impact that the two of you are having on the world because of your kindness and your big hearts, it doesn't surprise me that you're doing it, but it surprises me how you landed here. And so I want you to just take a couple minutes. Maybe, Wade, we can start with you. Tell us a little of your background and then how that ties into here, maybe how Tyler got involved, and then Ty, you can give your background too. So let's start there.
Okay, yeah, great. So for me, my first exposure or experience with anything related to Cambodia, which is where we're doing a lot of our work, started with being called on an LDS mission to California, actually, Fresno, California, but Cambodian speaking. So I spent a couple of years with refugee populations that had just come from, the war, the genocide in Cambodia in the 70s. And they had come over to California and they were rebuilding their lives. So I got a little bit of, language experience and things like that for a couple of years. Then I came back. I actually think I met Tyler right after that, about in the year 2000, when he was getting going with chiropractic stuff. And so he had a practice, and he was helping me out. I've got scoliosis, and so I need my back to be adjusted a bit. And so he was able to help me out. We've been family friends for a long time. We grew up close together, so our families knew each other growing up. And so In fact, I think my family were your first patients.
They were my very, very first patient. I didn't even have an office when they started coming in.
That's right.
Yeah, so first patients.
Yeah. So then for me, I kind of moved on. I was going to school down at the University of Utah, and I got married. For my first year anniversary, we saved up, and my wife and I went to Cambodia. At this point, I was almost done with school, and I had in my mind's eye what that experience would be like. First, I also thought it was something that, maybe it'd be romantic. It was my anniversary. And so I was a poor college kid. It was a lot of money to save up to get to the other side of the planet, but we did it. And when we arrived in Cambodia, it was so much different than I thought it was going to be. I had an image of poverty that was wrong. It was an image that was formed from living in what I thought were poor areas of Fresno, California, and it didn't match at all what my mind had envisioned when I heard these refugees for 2 years tell me about war and genocide and poverty. It didn't match, and I had to try to reconcile that in my mind. It was hard. I had a lot of things that were pulling on my heartstrings. I felt some sort of an obligation to help. I didn't know what that meant, but I couldn't let it be. So when we came back,
This was year one, literally year one, newlywed anniversary.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was in 2004. I came back, and I was at the very end of my bachelor's degree, and I was taking my last elective, and I picked this class called Development Economics. Sounded kind of interesting. So I get in this class, and I have this professor, and from the very beginning, she was great. She started laying out what poverty was, which because I just had this experience, I'm like, oh, I can kind of relate to that. I can see the different types of poverty. And she started showing case studies where they had changed entire countries' futures by putting good policy into place. And like, for instance, Bangladesh, and doubled and tripled the GDP per capita and taken people from being extremely poor to poor where they could develop. And thought, this is amazing. I ate it up. I'm like, this is a topic? Like, how come this isn't being taught in elementary school? It's kind of a big deal. I thought it should be one of the core topics. It was so important to me. And so in talking with the professors, they're like, well, yeah, I mean, you could do something with this, but you need to get a degree in economics. I'm like, okay, that's more school. I'm calculating how much more school. They're like, well, but you can do your bachelor's in whatever, but we're talking like grad school economics. And I knew what grad school was, but I didn't really know how long it took. They're like, you need to get a PhD in economics if you want to really have an impact in a place like Cambodia. I'm like, okay, that's like 7 years of graduate school. But you can do it faster if you know what you want to do. So I pursued a PhD, and I studied various topics in Cambodia. What I ended up landing on for my dissertation was landmines, UXO, or unexploded ordnance, which they now call explosive remnants of war, ERW. Cambodia has the largest problem in the world with landmines, left over from lots of different warring factions, and more landmines than people. Even still. So that was the topic that I really latched onto. Long story short, we had a lot of success in that area with some good policy and some good research behind it, showing that the accidents that were being classified as accidents actually had economic incentive driving the behavior. So we were able to intervene and put into place some policy that helped redirect traffic away from the riskiest part of the tampering process, which is saving lives. So removing the landmines we're still on lots of years before that happens, a time frame. But as far as intervening with people are dying from intentionally engaging with ordnance, those numbers have plummeted, very low. We're under 100 a year now.
Yeah. Incredible. Question for you. Hearing that and knowing a little bit of your background, but I want you to share this. What was it that tugged on your heartstrings? I mean, I know you had a tie from your LDS mission, but when you went there, was there something in your background and the way that you grew up that there was just this factor of like, I need to make a difference. I need to make a difference in other people's lives, because your own family story, I think, informs a lot about the heartstrings of the Roberts and why that's such a strong pull.
So for me personally, so I have cystic fibrosis, which is something you're born with. You can't catch it. It's a recessive trait carry. So my parents are both carriers. So there was a 25% chance that each child would have it. So my parents had 8 children, and 3 of us have cystic fibrosis. My younger sister's already passed away from it. And then I have a younger brother that also has it. So life expectancy for me at birth was 8 years. It continued to go higher as I got older, but certainly living into my mid-40s now was not statistically likely. So for me, I've actually found that while initially it seemed like quite the disadvantage, I've actually found it to be quite an advantage, because it gave me a perspective shift. If you don't think you have 20 or 30 years or 50 years or whatever, you're like, hey, you might only have this next decade. What do you want to do? So for me, it was like when I found something I was passionate about. I mean, first it was swimming in college. That's what I was passionate about, and I did it with all my heart. I worked hard at that. When it shifted to things that were related to Cambodia, life expectancy was still pretty short at that time. It was in the 20s, but it wasn't 100 years. So for me, it was like, well, if we want to do something, let's go do it. Let's, make the impact now. So I think that for me, this feeling of urgency of, hey, if you want to make a difference in the world, go do it right now. Instead of this idea of, well, let's wait until I have a bunch of money, or let's wait until we're retired and I have some free time, which is the classic way of thinking about it. I didn't really have that option.
So at that early age of newlywed showing up in Cambodia, that was part of your mindset though, of I could still die of this at a young age. And so impact is like, there was an urgency around your impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I have to credit my wife with her willingness to go a lot, first of all, and just being willing to be on that roller coaster of saying, hey, I'll marry a guy that I know has a terminal illness. I mean, I have the utmost respect for her. She's got quite a perspective.
What's her name?
Cindy.
And
so, and then her willingness as well, when I say, hey, I want to do grad school and I want to study landmines in Cambodia, and I got to go over there a bunch and collect the data, because the data doesn't exist. It's hasn't been done before. Oh, and we don't have any money, so are you cool if we move back into the basement of my parents' house? I know we've been living on our own for a while, but
yeah.
Are you okay taking a step backwards so that we can do that? Because that's the only place we had any money. We had a little bit of equity in our house.
Yeah.
And she was cool with it.
Yeah, so Cindy's a rock star.
Yeah, in fact, she came along on the trips.
It's amazing.
She speaks Khmer too.
Does she?
Yes, she does.
Yeah, she's learned the language.
Pretty
Incredible.
good at it.
So take us in, Wade, take us to, that gives great context, of your story. I know Tyler enters this story in terms of being a chiropractor, maybe just dovetail. How does it go further into the Tyler connection and story there?
A few years after this, we thought, let's do this more formally. We had kind of a charity effort that we were doing. It was called Our Hands. And Tyler and his wife were board members of that, and we were doing some just projects. It was all self-funded though, and it was all related to just usually individual families that we were trying to help and test things in Cambodia. Then about 2.5 years ago, my brothers Lone Pro have had some success. They want to do the give back. They love Cambodia. They've been going there a lot over the years as well. So they approached Tyler and I and said, hey, would you guys be willing to help create this thing and help run it? Let's make it happen. Let's do it now instead of waiting until we're old and out of energy. Let's do it now. And Tyler, so now Tyler comes in and he's been going out there lots of times, and he helped manages everything with health. So we've got a huge health program with Become More, lots of different things underneath it, and he manages all of those.
When they asked me to jump on board, I was driving down to a 7v7 football tournament for my son. So Lloyd calls, his brother. We're on our way down to Vegas. And he's like, Tyler, I got a business proposition for you. And I'm like, okay, what is it? He goes, well, where are you? I said, I'm on my way to Vegas. He goes, well, you might have to come, we'll have to talk Monday. I'm like, dude, I'll turn around and drive home right now and rent Kristen a car. They can go down there. I'm going to come home. He's like, no, we'll talk to you Monday. I'm like, serious? I spent the whole weekend. In fact, Wade and I talked, we didn't know what the business proposition was.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, I can't sleep. Are you up? And he's like, bro, what is, so we're racking our brains. Okay, what is it? Finally, Monday rolls around and they introduced the idea of starting a charity over in Cambodia. And yeah, it wasn't even a decision. They asked me if I could drop my practice down to 3 days a week. Done deal, let's do it. So I figured if they were going to do it, I know what kind of guys these were. You talk about cystic fibrosis and packing a lot into a little bit of time. I mean, working with these guys, they get months worth of work done in a day. Like it's Ironman training just to keep up with them. And I think that comes with having that. I don't know if I'm going to be around for a year or 5 years or 10, but they're the most productive people on the planet. So when I figured I had the opportunity to work with them, it wasn't even a question.
Tell us a little bit about the brothers, just to give context, and Lone Pro, and why the call came from them that day. What were they thinking about? Because you were already involved in Cambodia. You were already involved in it. So how did they get involved, and how did that elevate this whole thing?
You want to take it?
Well, a little bit of history of Lone Pro is Wade's probably better suited to answer this, but from my perspective, Lone Pro, they've just built this company and it's had very good financial success. And in typical Roberts fashion, they're always worried about, I want to give back. I want to do something more. And so they had built the company to a point where they had the means to be able to go out and they wanted to make a difference. And so they said, we'll put up some of the front money to see if this is going to be a possibility, if you guys will jump on board and really dig in and see if we can make a viable product out of this. But they're like, we want to create the best not-for-profit organization in the world, and we're going to back it. And for me, again, it was a no-brainer. And so they were huge. They were instrumental. Like Wade said, we had dabbled in it, but neither one of us were in a position to throw that kind of money into it. And they came in and said, we'll do it if you'll throw in the energy to help put it together. And
so now we've got them all involved in different ways. So Rhett is still the CEO at Lone Pro. So that takes, all of his time. We're the hardest workers you'll ever meet. And he's helped build this.
Saw him last weekend at a race.
Yeah.
And it was fun to run into him. Yeah.
Nice.
He's such a good dude.
Talk about packing a lot into a day. He's king at that. Ben and Lloyd. Ben historically ran operations at Lone Pro, and Lloyd did things with marketing. They've both now retired into a position where they're helping with Become More. So Ben helps out with our Fat Cow program and animal husbandry. And Lloyd is running the other side of Become More, which is helping to maximize fulfillment for Americans. And we have a process by which people come out on trips to Cambodia to experience what's going on out there, but not with the intention of doing just humanitarian work for a day, because we actually have the Cambodia team that's doing that full time, and they're really good at it. But instead, we shifted a little bit and we say, hey, these are fulfillment trips. This is actually to help you grow as an individual. You go to Cambodia and you realize things about your life, things that are, maybe lacking, usually from perspective or lack of gratitude, where when you see the people in Cambodia, the common experience people have is they have to reconcile the fact that these people have so little and yet they are happier than I am. How do you explain that? How is that possible? And then they start this journey where they have to realize, well, why are my fulfillment levels so low? And so Lloyd's written a book, G Cubed, on this topic that addresses it, through gratitude, growth, and giving, a formula that helps you increase your levels of fulfillment. So Lloyd does that part, which is very
awesome book,
important.
by the way.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Ty gave me a copy, and I was like, "Wow, it's awesome!"
It's awesome, huh?
So all of my brothers are involved in this. They also go out on the trips. We've got 3 trips here in November. Rhett and Ben will be on those. Lloyd was on one earlier this year. So they're all very connected to the efforts, and which I'm very grateful for.
You have an incredible team, who's now involved. And, Tyler said something. I mean, he said this to me a couple times, but he just said it again. As soon as he heard what was going on, he was like, oh, I'm all in, which I think is a credit to your family. So just for a second, and then we'll dive back into actually Become More and what you're doing in Cambodia and the systems and the processes and the programs. But talk about your parents, if you don't mind. Wait, real quick. Just what was it growing up about your family? Because I've now met all the brothers and I know what your mindsets, relatively speaking, are. And it is conquer the world and then lift everybody along the way. I mean, it seems that way to me. I mean, it's pretty impressive.
My parents they're incredible people, and they were handed a deck of cards that maybe doesn't look too impressive to begin with. They have multiple children that have terminal illnesses. We also have an older sister with cerebral palsy. So a lot of bad cards, so to speak. But interestingly, their perspective, which I didn't realize was different from the rest of the world's until getting older, but they didn't really care which hand of cards they were dealt. They believed very strongly in making your own fate. Like, you might start from a lower position, but you're still in charge of where it goes from here. Trade your cards in, work harder, do whatever. So instead of seeing it as, I'm going to lose this because I was handed a bunch of twos, how can I actually still perform and achieve and experience and do all of the things that I want to do in spite of it? Work ethic definitely was there. And that's been something that's been handed down to all of us because we saw it. My father and mother are great examples of a strong work ethic. If there's work to be done, let's develop a plan and let's make it happen instead of sitting around complaining about anything. So my dad would work multiple jobs, whatever it took to make it happen. And so I think that really helped. So the work ethic was huge, but also a positive attitude. We didn't live life like we had terminal illnesses in that sense. We decided, instead of caving and giving up, what do I want to experience or accomplish or be, and then make it happen now. Work harder now so you can have that. So again, like I said before, it initially seemed like a disadvantage to me as a child when I learned what I had, but as the years went on, I actually started realizing that it gave me an advantage because it forced me to make the decision early on to do it now if you want to do it. And my whole family's that way.
It's incredible. I mean, I remember the day getting, treated by Tyler, and I'm like, what's the Roberts up to? And he's like, yeah, they have a used car dealership on State Street. And I'm like, that's amazing. And then 7 years later, I'm back, and he's pounding on my back. And I'm like, what are they up to? And they're like, oh, they built Loan Pro. And I'm like, Loan Pro? Like the Loan Pro? Yeah. And Wade's doing what in camp? It's the urgency around what you're doing has been impressive. I mean, it's so cool that that's in the family DNA. That is a silver lining of it, the health background. And I mean, it's cool. I mean, it's yeah, we can go on and on about that, but I wanted to, to hear about your parents. I've heard the brother's story, a little bit of the sisters, but that's cool to know the parental impact and what was taught there. So fast forward now we're into this, Become More, you're on board. Tyler's practice is now cut down. He's all in. Yeah. And, he reaches out to me and we have lunch, and within 10 minutes, he's in tears. Then I'm in tears and I'm thinking, dude, this is incredible. Like the impact that is going on. So take us through that. Why so much emotion around what is going on and the impact that's happening? What's going on in Cambodia with Become More?
You want to take it, or do you want me?
I can take it, man. I'm going to try to turn down this spigot a little bit, but I don't know. I think it's. I can give you several situations, but the first one that pops into mind is just going out there and seeing the abject poverty. I mean, when I stepped into that dump for the first time, there's a municipal dump out there where 1,500 or so people live. And
landfill.
It's a landfill. It's on the outskirts of Phnom Penh. The most filthy, vile. I don't know how to describe it. Other than I was telling Wade, I've told him a million times, I'm like, I've never even seen animals in the United States of America live in those conditions. And we kind of broke the rules a little bit and walked up onto the landfill and started walking around. And there were literally families on the top living with a tarp. And dude, like a styrofoam mattress. And you had little babies crawling around up there. That's their home. They're 100 feet up on filth, garbage. And they just had a little, a tarp that they had found in the garbage and a couple of poles to keep it up. And they had a couple little mattresses there, and that was their freaking house. Dad would go out day and night. It didn't matter. And again, in Cambodia, it is not, there's two seasons there. It's either hot or it's hot as hell. And there's just it's hot. And they're out there working day and night just trying to get enough. And I remember walking through, and there were multiple families with little babies just crawling around in this filth. They had no clothes on, no anything. And I remember just thinking, holy crap, dude. I didn't even know a place this bad existed on Earth. And then I get back to my hotel. We're staying at this place called the Naga World. It's this 5-star hotel downtown. I go down, I eat my breakfast, and I'm just like, or eat my dinner or whatever. And I'm just like, this is like unreal. Like, I'm here, they're there. Like, it's not right. Like, what can I do? I still can't sleep at night when I think of those little kiddos out there. But that whole freaking trip, I just kept going back to these several little kids up there just crawling around. And then my mind goes back to the parent in me. And I'm like, I've got 4 kids. What would I do? Like, if I couldn't provide for them, like, how desperate would I feel if I couldn't even put food on the table, if I couldn't put a roof over their head? So I just put myself in these poor parents' situation. Like, they literally, they're not lazy. They just didn't have the means to help their own family. So I remember just sitting there going, dude, I can work 3 days a week. I'll ditch my entire clinic if I can just go over here and help full time and just see the difference that we could make in these people's lives. And it changed me to the core. That one trip, I stayed awake all night going, I'm here. This little girl I've never met, what's she doing right now? I just had a great meal, 5-star hotel, and she's out there with what? And I just can't get it out of my mind. Took a little picture of this little girl, and I got it in my office. She's just super happy. She gets a picture of this little girl, and I'm just like, man, she's got nothing. Like, she has zero hope growing up, none, if we can't help her. And so for me, man, I don't know, I get all booby pants about it, but it fundamentally changed me. And so to be able to be over there and have a skill set that we can help these people, and we can help them help themselves, which was my biggest thing. Is I know we could go over there and we can give them stuff, but man, if we could provide a program that could actually give these parents a little bit of hope, saying, okay, now I've got the tools that I can actually help my family. So I think the biggest thing that hit me was these parents weren't lazy. They didn't have the means to even provide for their kids. And I can't imagine me as a parent waking up every morning and having that feeling like, how am I going to be able to feed them today?
Yeah.
So that one hit me hard. And then it just kept on throughout the trip. As we started getting out into the rural areas, it was the same thing. They're super industrious. They work hard. They just don't have the resources. And so we're able to put together a program that helps provide them with the resources and the knowledge to be able to help them help themselves, which is, I think, the biggest thing that I've fallen in love with is we're helping them help themselves.
Yeah.
They're not going to rely on us forever.
Talk through, Wade, poverty. Just for a minute, in terms of your economics background, your education, the research you've done, just talk about the varying levels of poverty, and then dovetail that into these terms that you've talked about and used before about nominal versus profound impact.
Yeah. So classically defined, you can use poverty measures. There's lots of different ways to try to capture what poverty is. But fundamentally, there's 2 main ways of doing it. The first is something where we look at a relative measure of poverty, which is what most of the developed world will use, so like the United States. And this is classically defined as half of median income. So just for simple math, let's say that the average household's making 50 grand. So if you make less than 25 grand, definitionally you're poor. And that's essentially what developed countries will use. So that target moves based on how wealthy median income is and where that moves up and down. In poor countries, which we have a lot of countries in the world that are still poor or developing, oftentimes what we're using is an absolute measure of poverty. And so the number will move based on purchasing power parity, but right now it's at $1.90 a day. So essentially, if you're making less than $2 a day, you're considered to be in extreme poverty. And those are two very different realities. If you're talking about what it is to be definitionally poor living here in Utah versus being poor in a country like Cambodia, the numbers just are very far away from each other. So extreme poverty in a developing country, we're talking about these people are in circumstances where they're just getting through today. They don't have the capacity to save. And that's the critical distinction is when you're stuck in this poverty trap, as it's called, you're not able to actually progress or excel financially or to acquire assets or capital because you're stuck in a cycle that requires that you use all of your time today in order to get to tomorrow, usually just to eat. And it's that basic. And you still do have, a lot of people don't make it. I mean, mortality rates are high. Neonatal mortality rates in these villages that we first go into, it's pretty high for basic things. They're drinking from the river that's as brown as chocolate milk and is toxic with pesticide and arsenic and all sorts of things because, a water system is way too expensive to filter water. Like nobody can afford that out there. They're at $2 a day. So because of that, they're caught in a lot of traps that we don't experience here because, we've developed beyond that. Our parents, our grandparents, they developed lots of things before we ever got here. Now, what that forces is, for me, when you understand that there's a different way of looking at poverty through the different lenses, you have to start reconciling with some harder questions that are usually related to the value of life. Now, that's an interesting topic. It's one I love. I love discussing because it is a topic that makes people uncomfortable enough that learning is possible. But when we talk about the value of life, we're essentially, as a forensic economist, it's something I've had to do quite a bit for the courts, for different cases I've worked on. You ultimately have to assign a value to life. So, for example, someone dies in a car accident, right? And there's some sort of insurance claim, and then it's got to go and get reconciled. And there's a number. I mean, how much value was lost, right? And so how do you come up with that value? When I first started looking into this, it was interesting because there was a cost-benefit analysis performed for the country of Cambodia that was supposed to determine how much funding they got from a big pot of money to remove landmines. And they were getting such a small sliver of money, and they had the biggest problem. And I'm like, well, how is that? Like, well, because of the cost-benefit analysis. I'm like, so walk me through that. How does that work? So in reading through it, I found that the costs were the actual direct costs of removing landmines, but the benefits were being affixed to like, well, you can now use that land to grow product and you can value that. And a certain number of people are not dead. I'm like, okay, but how do you connect a number to that? And they're like, well, it's easy. We just use what's called the foregone earnings approach. So it's like, if Bob was 20 years old when Bob died, like how long would Bob have lived and how much money would he have made over his lifetime? And then it dawned on me, oh, so if Bob makes under $2 a day, his value is super low compared to like if an American or European died, it would be astronomically high, relative. And they're like, yes, that's correct. And that didn't feel right to me. I didn't feel like assigning value based on only your capacity to earn was sufficient. It didn't go all the way in my heart.
And earn in that country. So the country's economics is a direct correlation to the value of life there.
Yeah, so you're born into some circumstance. You win the lottery, you lose the lottery, and then you can develop from wherever you were born, right? And so that was ultimately the reason why they were getting such low funding. And So for me, that stuck with me over the years, this idea that, oh, we're valuing life. We're making decisions all the time that place value on people and purpose and cause. And by giving to cause A, I didn't give to cause B. Now, it forces a harder question, which is, who am I actually responsible to and for? Now, I think everyone agrees that you would put like your wife and your kids and your parents and your siblings and maybe your closest friends would be on that inner circle. We all feel responsible to those that we're closest to. But once you get out to the stranger circle, the question is, now who are you responsible to? And classically, people have said, well, I feel more responsible to people if they share citizenship with me or a religion with me or whatever. But we're still making decisions about how are you valuing life, right? How many Americans are you willing to help with $1 versus somebody right across the border in Mexico? And more specifically, if you had a certain amount of resource to bless the lives of a person and improve their well-being in the United States, it's a good thing. I'm not saying it's not a good thing. But what if that same amount of resource could be used to help a group of people that were not American? It forces you to reconcile with the hard question of, am I responsible for them? Now, when you go meet them, and if you feel like you might value life equally throughout the world, well, then I would suggest that your capacity to impact the people who are the poorest on the planet is greater than your capacity to help people that are living at $20,000 or $30,000 a year. You can help a lot more of them. You also can help in a more profound way. You're ultimately picking between helping one person in a nominal way versus a group of people in a profound way. And when I'm talking profound, I'm talking life-saving often, right? You're putting in a water system. Now they're drinking filtered water for the first time. We've got this new system that we just barely opened like 2 weeks ago. I was out there. It's a reverse osmosis system. It's for the whole village. So you got like 1,000 people using this thing every day. And the quality of the water is as good or better than United States standard. It's filtering down to like 5 microns. So it's even getting virus. It's amazing. Well, these people are ecstatic about this. I mean, they were literally drinking the river before. And all sorts of problems developed from doing that, right? So they're already seeing improvements in health, even in the first 2 weeks. It's amazing. Other things in the health that Tyler could talk about forever. I mean, looking at prenatals, vitamin A, deworming, you get into hygiene, all sorts of things. These are profound ways of impacting people's lives, helping them go to school, right? I know for my kids, it's been a fun process to see them transform as they realized they've been going out for, pretty much their whole life. My oldest, Bronson, he's 17 now, and he had an experience when he was, a bit younger. We took him out there, and he realized that a lot of his friends that he was playing with out there weren't able to go to school. And he got to go to school simply because he was born where he was born. Going to school is seen more as of a right. Everybody gets to go to school. We fixed that problem. But a lot of the people in these villages are not going to school. So one thing we did when we were younger, we told our kids, hey, we're going to Cambodia next year. And they're happy, right? They love that. They've always picked Cambodia over Disneyland. My kids have never been to Disneyland.
Yes.
I've said, hey,
nice.
you kind of feel this strange guilt as a parent. You're like, I kind of feel like culture told me that if I'm a good parent, I took my kids to Disneyland, right? Or else you fail as a parent for some reason. It's a weird pressure. But we've given
about
our
that
kids
turkey
the
leg.
Yeah.
That turkey leg and beignets, right?
Yeah, we've given our kids the option multiple times. Hey, we could do Disneyland, or we could go to Cambodia because they're kind of about the same in cost. And they're like, Cambodia every single time. Well, Bronson had this experience where I'm like, okay, great, you can go to Cambodia next year. But here's the deal. You got to raise $200. However you raise $200, and then you have to decide on how to help somebody with that money. So he's like, okay. So he did all sorts of things, right? He went around and he did yard work for people. He even sold worms, which is amazing. And he raised the money. But the harder part was he had to decide, like, what's the best use of funds, which is a good exercise to have your kids do. Like, how are you going to help somebody?
Yeah.
Do you just hand them the cash? Do you buy them food? Or do you provide an opportunity for them that is life-changing? So when he pushed on the details a little bit, he learned that $200 was enough to pay for 2 kids to go to school for an entire year. Well, that sold him, right? But it not only sold him on use of funds, it transformed the way he saw education. He now realized that he was lucky to be able to go to school. And now he's excelled at it, and he's done wonderful. I mean, he's almost done with college, and he's a senior in high school. He's fast-tracked it because he has that vision. So I think those are some things that are also profound multipliers.
It seems like that is it's an intersecting point that you are taking. I mean, yourselves, have been through that. It seems like Loan Pro at one point, the kids, the things you're teaching is this concept of how do I have a nominal versus profound impact on the planet, on the human race. And, that theme has come out over and over in the visits that I've had with Tyler is I can stay a chiropractor or a nutritionist and impact people's lives here. And it changed my life. I was one, but when I sit now with Tyler, he's talking about families at the landfill. He's talking about villages of people who now have hope that they can not die from the drinking. So this idea of nominal versus profound is it's a theme, right? And it's incredible. Dive further into all of the systems and processes, because it's not just drinking water. I mean, I want you to talk about the fat cow, and I want you to talk about the dentistry and those things. So take us through the other programs.
So the crux of it is like health, education, economic development, or the 3 tenets. And I'll let Wade describe a little bit more on the fat cow, because he's the guy that did all of the fun stuff for that. But the big thing is we really wanted to. It was a village-centric model where the model we came up with was everything centered around that school. So that's where we put the water, so the community can come in and they can get their water there. And then we have the English school. We chose English because it's the international language of business. And the research suggests that kids who are fluent in English can 2 to 10x their income over their life if they learn to speak English. Now, the one thing too I want to back up on, it wasn't us going into the village and saying, hey, we're going to do this, 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 and this. It's a very communal culture over there. And so we sat down with the village chiefs and the commune chiefs and said, hey, this is what we're trying to do. Let's get your feedback on what you guys think that we can come in here and do to help you guys the best. So it wasn't just us Americans coming in saying, this is what we think we need to do. We sat down, and Wade sat down in council with them for weeks to try to come up with what we could do to most effectively impact that whole village. So we start them at the school where we have our English schools, we have our water, and then we have our dental program, which the dental program is fun. None of those kids have ever seen a dentist before. And so we've got portable dental units that we can go right out to the schools and perform our dental work. We have since created a partnership with the Phnom Penh Dental School. So they'll be doing rotations out into those villages in perpetuity. So they're
dental
dental
students.
Care. Yep, dental students in perpetuity under the direction of the dentists who run the school. So the president of the school and the director of their education. See, what else am I missing here? Oh, the financial literacy, which I'll let Wade talk a little bit more about. He's got all the numbers on the fat cow program that we have, which is there's a buzzword, sustainability is a buzzword, but we really wanted this to be a sustainable program, a truly sustainable program. And we had to create an economic engine within our programs to be able to spit off enough money that we can fund all of these other programs without having to get ongoing donations for these particular villages. And the fat cow family farms are the way that we've done it. So I'll turn it over to Wade, because he's got a super good idea. If there's anything else I missed on that as well.
With what we're doing, I think it's important to point out that all of the things in health, which we've got lots of different things under that umbrella, and all of the things in education, those all just cost money. I mean, every year they cost the same in our country, right? We pay a bunch of money for those things ongoing. And that's the nature of those types of gives. So we wanted to create a system that could allow for long-term viability of those programs, but have some sort of an engine that's creating some sort of payback that can continue to fund them. Otherwise, you see a lot of charities spend time with one hand out to donors and then one hand over here to the recipient, and they toggle back and forth. And as time goes on, they end up spending most of their time focused on the one hand towards the donor instead of focused on impact. We didn't want to have to do that. So what we did is we essentially looked out in these areas, did all of our research for things that could reasonably be done in rural Cambodia by anybody that would give us a return on investment, which really limits us to agricultural products, lots of rice, cashew nuts. We looked at a lot of things there, and animal husbandry. So they've got a bunch of different types of animals that we compared as well. The highest returns on investment that we found, and we spent a lot of time on this, like this is for years we've been looking at these things, was with cattle. So that's what we're leaning into. Not because, that's what it has to be forever or that it would be in another country. It could be any other animal. And if it changed, we would switch to that as well if it gave us a better return so that it can continue to have some sort of outcome that can feed the health and the education program for the village. So essentially what we have then is each village is modeled this way, where we have fat cow family farms, and the recipients, they get a couple of cows that they manage for the life of the cow, which is like 16 years statistically. And then what happens is it produces a 5 times return on investment. That return then comes back into the charity that continues to pay for the ongoing health and the education needs of that village. And there's a break-even spot depending on population of whatever. Once your herd is so big, you've now reached that sustainability spot where you don't have to go back to the donors and say, hey, we've got this cool thing set up, but if we don't get that next dollar, we die, right? And so we didn't want to have that be our story. So with Fat Cow, we developed a little game that essentially lets people play through a 7-year period. It's kind of like a mix between like Monopoly and Robert Kiyosaki's, cash flow quadrant concept.
Yeah.
But it takes their actual information from where they live and their economics, how much they can earn. They roll the die, and it gives them statistically, 95% will get between that amount each year based on agricultural harvest seasons and whatever. And then they have these expenses that are incurred throughout the year, and it's in conjunction with probabilities for each roll. So they have different side dies and all these things. They can have cultural events happen, which they do. So we allow for some teaching to take place there around the 2 biggest traps in Cambodia financially, cultural traps, are the money they spend around the cultural events of weddings and funerals. But when you look at the details a little bit more, it's not because a wedding costs that much. It's because they're spending most of that money on alcohol at the wedding. So we actually introduce in our game a choice where they can spend as much as they want, but the goal of the game is to actually amass a certain number of cows and go to school. So to get education and to become wealthy is the goal of the game. So the kids pick up pretty quick when they play Fat Cow. They're like, well,
go dry more cows.
Yeah, if you roll and you get a wedding or a funeral and they're like, okay, well, how much do you want to spend? You have a minimum cost that are actual costs, right? But it's like,
totally.
But I mean, you can spend as much as you want. And they're like, well, why would I spend more? You told me the goal of the game was to have money, cows, and be educated. I'm like, it is, but you get to make your own choice. Spend as much as you want.
Yeah.
And they get it. They're like, well, I'm not even going to have alcohol at my wedding. So, the leaders of this village love it because they're like, this is a really good teaching tool. We love this. So they've adopted this. They use it all throughout the communities out there. They even, all the way up to the college, they're using this in the college. So essentially, if I had to summarize this, what's going on in the traditional model of raising cattle in Cambodia, it's not really a good story. It's their largest productive asset. They're not vaccinating, so you have like 42% of them that die before they're old enough to breed, which is, by the way, 4 years is what it takes to be old enough to breed in the skinny cow version because they're emaciated. They don't have enough nutrition to hit puberty at the 2-year mark like you normally see in cattle.
About a 44% chance of dying before they even hit that age of reproduction.
Yeah. So it's like you're kind of flipping a coin with your largest productive asset. And then if they live long enough to breed, you end up getting like 22 months between baby A being born and baby B. So it's it's this long drawn out process of producing another cow eventually, but it's slow. The babies that are born are skinny. The mamas are about 450 pounds, so they're small, they're skeletal. They're walking them around to essentially graze on rice straw and generally in the direction of water, which takes 4 hours a day on average for a kid to do. And by the way, he's not going to school because he's walking his cow. So this is the classic traditional model. What we've done is we've taken concepts from throughout the world that exist and we've adapted it so that we can get the highest return on investment and have positive spillover effects. So what we've done is we've said, okay, we no longer walk the cows. We build stables at your house. We bring the feed to them. We have a grass, it's a king grass that has high protein in it that helps them bulk up and be well fed.
I mean, we've measured that. Like we've measured the nutrient contents at different heights of the grass. So we've got it down to the exact level that they need to cut that at so they can maximize the nutritional value.
Yeah.
Because initially they're like, well, let's get it as tall as we can. When it gets up to 10 or 12 feet, there's zero nutritional value. You cut it at 2.5, 3 feet and you get all the nutrition.
Yeah, it starts
value.
as it grows, it starts trading off the protein for fiber so it can go tall. So yeah, there's an optimal height that you want to cut this. But we vaccinate the cows, which now brings the mortality down to like 2%. So now they're almost certain to keep their cow. The cow now at the age of 2 is a breeder and weighs over 1,000 pounds. So like cows here, right? They get bigger, even though they're a different type. That we got the Brahma and we've got the yellow cow and a lot of mixes and stuff. And now they're having a baby every year, right? So the cool thing in Cambodia, I mean, here we have to time the birth of cows to avoid winter, but there's no snow, so you can have cows whenever. So you have this cycle then, and you create this engine where you have all of these fat cows that are producing babies every year. And then we've modeled it so that it works culturally. Because in Cambodia, we have Theravada Buddhism is predominant, which also has roots in Hinduism. And they have a very strong, I wouldn't even say belief, I would say knowledge about karma. This idea of if you do good, you receive good, right? There's these karma loops that are tied to your action and your intention. Both matter. Because all action first originates as intention. They talk about that a lot. So what we've done is we've modeled it so that the participants of the Fat Cow Family Farm, they get 2 cows. The first one is the Become More charity cow that they agree to take care of. And all of the babies that are born to that cow go back to us, and then we give them to the next poor families in the village through a process. The second cow is their family cow. And they get to personally benefit from the babies off of that cow, all of the babies off of that cow, except for the first baby. That first baby is their give to the community, but it's also what we have asked them for in our ask. So you have culturally, if you give something, there's an expectation of a return. And so in satisfying that, we tell them from the very beginning, you have to live by these rules in the program. But what we want from you in exchange for enrolling is the first cow you have to give away to your neighbor. And they're great with that because it closes the karma loop. They're still ahead, right? And then they have all of the other cows, which they get every year, and they weigh twice as much. So that's where we get the savings. That's where the savings in the model comes. And then when we get ours, we get boys, they sell them at market, and then we can use that money to backflow and pay for health and education. Did I miss anything there? Or?
No, that was a good summary.
Hearing you describe
Good
this,
summary.
I just have to pump the brakes for a second and go, this is not Costco. This is not a new Harmon's opening. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just to pump the brakes for a second to listeners and just say, these are people who are living off of the cow, and it's making them wealthier than they've ever seen in their lives. I mean, to put that in context, what would it be like in the 1800s where Americans would have been, maybe not even then, but just the humility of the circumstances of the people, it's incredible, just in comparison. So say more, Ty.
Yeah, an interesting thing on that is Wade was out there this last trip, and somebody was saying, well, wait a minute, those aren't the same cattle that we have. Those are a completely different breed of cattle. And Wade's like, they're like, are they Thai cattle? And Wade's like, no, these are your cattle. We just fed them right. We gave them the right nutrition. They didn't even look like the same breed of animal. Like theirs are just skinny and sickly, and ours are just these massive, huge, fat animals. They didn't even think they were the same breed. They're like, come on, you guys are bringing in cows from Thailand. So we actually performed an experiment. We bought skinny cows that were already a couple years old, brought them in and started feeding them, and they turned into big fat cows, and they didn't even recognize them.
Yeah, and even when the cows, as we get more and more out there, we're seeing sometimes if they're stunted enough, the mama cow will never actually look as good as she would have otherwise, but it didn't do anything to her DNA. So as soon as that baby's born, once she has the proper nutrition, you've got your beautiful fat cow that's just good from the start. So that's what we're finding is that the conversion process of the first ones, they don't always look amazing. Sometimes they're limited to only get up to 900 pounds or something, but their babies, they take right off.
What's the impact, Ty? How's this impacting these people?
Oh, man. Well, I think the big thing is they're getting a little bit of hope. They're like, okay, I've got my kids now have a chance to get educated. I can provide my kiddos with something down the road that we actually have hope in our families and in our community. It's not just a filled to mouth kind of subsistence living. We can actually start to plan, and we can actually start to have goals for our family. I think that, I don't know, from my opinion, I think that's the biggest thing. When we go out there to Cambodia now, number one, it's starting to just strangely feel like home. I get there and I'm like, I do not want to leave. I love this place. But when we go out there, become more, I think now signifies to the community that we got hope. Like we can actually now start to have some dreams and really better the lives for our kids, our family, our grandkids. And that's what I'm seeing out there. But on the flip side of that, on the selfish side of that, what it's done for me is I remember coming home on our first trip and Wade goes, so what did you think? And I remember it hit me right there. I go, dude, I've been out here for 2 weeks and I didn't think of Tyler once. Like I didn't think of myself one single time in that 2 weeks. Like now that I'm getting on this airplane, I'm like, okay, I'm thinking about me. I got to go back to work. But for 2 weeks, I didn't think about me. It was all about helping the other people. And so we sit and we talk about helping Cambodians. I would argue they're doing just as much for me in return, in just being their humility and just their culture has just been life-changing for me.
Yeah, I think as far as impact, there are a lot of stories that have tugged at my heart and continue to. It's the hard part about development is that when you start feeling responsible for people that live in such meager circumstance, it goes home with you. And you continue to feel that obligation everywhere you go. Like you feel for your children in a way. It's always thinking about their well-being and the next area. Like we're measuring things. So we're able to say, we're able to actually track the data and make statements about how much things have improved. And as an example, like our first village, we had 54% of kids primary age, so first through sixth grade, that were attending school. So about half. We now have 95% of kids at school. So we know how far the needle moves, right? We're setting up a randomized control trial to test some of the other things as well, because no one's going to disagree that giving people safe drinking water is a good idea and that it improves their health. But how much does it decrease mortality? What about with the prenatals? What about the hygiene program? What about when they're all put together? And so we need answers to those things, and we're tracking it. We're also getting, we have 85 villages that are participating in this out there. So in Cambodia, the presence is pretty large. And The 85 villages are helping us to collect data as administrative data so that we know, for instance, cause of death for people that die. What's killing people, right? Where are we actually at? How much are we, not from a socioeconomic survey perspective, but from an actual census of the area, what does the average family make? What's the max? What's the min? What's the whatever? So we have that data. And that's something that we can now say, okay, great, here's where the starting point is. And as we adopt new villages, we'll be able to see how that moves along, how the needles move for mortality, for the capacity to save or earn, attendance at school, all the things we're doing, we'll be able to see how the needle moves for the whole village.
It's incredible. You've both mentioned stories, that we have discussed offline, but I want you to mention a couple because I want to tie together impact both economically, that we've discussed the implications of that on a village, but on a personal level too, just the stories of the individuals and the things that you're seeing. I mean, Ty, do you want to mention a little bit just about some of the dental, situations that you've encountered, and even those who are just frankly homeless or they don't belong
I'll
to
give
anyone?
you two scenarios. The one that we talked about earlier was with our dental program. The first time we went out there, we're trying to figure out how to set this program up, and we get the word out to the community that, hey, we've got some American dentists here, and there's some Cambodian dental students, and come, we're going to check out the kids. We're going to start getting our data together. We're going to get them a dental record. And we noticed there was this older gentleman just standing by the door. And originally I thought it was a teacher at the school. And man, he stood there for hours and hours. And finally asked him, we're like, hey, sir, what do you need anything? What can we do? And he was, I just heard there was a dentist here and I've had this tooth and it's been killing me. It's been years. And I don't have any way of getting this thing out. And so my brother's a dentist and he's the one that has helped do a lot of work setting up our dental program. And he goes, all right, open up your mouth. He opens up his mouth. We look back at one of his molars and there's a hole in there. You could fit my pinky in. I mean, it was just, this thing was rotting away and he had no way to pull this thing out. So my brother took the tooth out and immediately he's touching his face going, oh my gosh, I've had years of pain. It's gone. So this is so cool. So a very simple thing. The other one was I got a picture and I can't remember if it was the staff or it was you that sent it, this little boy in a wheelchair. And I get this picture and they're like, man, this kid can't walk. He's been in this wheelchair forever. What do you think's wrong? I can just see this kid in a wheelchair. And I'm like, well, can you guys get some more video? Like stand him up, take his shirt off, just video, take pictures of every piece of part of his body. So they sent me some video, took his shirt off. I'm looking at this going, man, this looks to me like it's rickets. And so I send the pictures over to a couple of my buddies who are in the medical profession. And I said, hey, I'm kind of thinking rickets. What are you guys thinking? And they sent it back, said, yeah, it looks like rickets. And, we go through all the different types of rickets and how you help it. And they said, you know what? I said, I'm thinking of just doing some vitamin D supplementation, vitamin D, calcium, magnesium, and then some micronutrient supplementation. Let's see what we can do. Like this kid it was painful to touch. He couldn't walk. He couldn't do anything. He was a beat kid.
Oh yeah, curved legs.
Was just, and his demeanor. He was not a typical Cambodian kid. He was beat. And so anyhow, we put together. It was, if I remember right, I was between $40 and $60 worth of supplementation. So we decided, okay, we're going to mega dose the kid for the first 30 days. Next 30 days, we're going to cut it in half, and then we'll get him on a maintenance dose the final 30 days. And I'm thinking, man, it's bad. I mean, his legs were curved, his arms were curved. It was not a good situation. I'm thinking, we're going to get anywhere with this kid. And I don't know what it was. 6 weeks later, I get a picture of the dude, and he's freaking out of his wheelchair, standing up, and now he's going to school because he didn't dare go to school. His mom was like, he's embarrassed. He can't go to school because he can't play games. He can't do anything. So I'm like, okay, 6 weeks later, this kid's up and he's not doing much activity, but he's out of his wheelchair and he's standing. I get a video from these guys. It was probably 4 months later.
4 or 5 months.
We go over in the evening and we play night games over at the tech school. There's soccer fields, basketball, volleyball, and this kid's playing soccer. So he's still got some bowing in his legs, which I don't know that we'll ever get rid of. But he can run. He's in school and he's excelling in school. He's in our English program. And I'm like, $40, $50 was all that kid needed. Plus they're in a country where it's sunny all the time. I told his mom, I'm like, the best medicine is go out in your front yard, take his shirt off for 15 minutes. Because in Cambodia, they don't like being exposed to the sun. Like, this is one of your best things is we're going to supplement him. And then I need him to go out for 15 minutes and just lay out there in the sun. And I mean,
serotonin.
yes. And I mean, it's everything. And he's got the vitamin D that helps convert that vitamin D. And so, but he was literally, I have video of the kid playing soccer now and he's laughing. He's got his personality back. And to me, I'm like, that's just what it's all about. So whenever I go there, I go knock on Vidiac's door and I'm like, hey buddy, can you come out and play? And I mean, I think of them as my own kiddos now, but so that's some of the fun stuff, some of the stories. And that's honestly, we could go all day. We could sit here all day and talk about stories.
I would expound on that same one. That kid's name's Vidiac, and his mom is level 10 happy. In fact, anytime she sees Tyler or I come around, like, she's in tears again because this changed her kid's reality, which changed her reality. Because people forget when you have a handicapped child, especially in a poor country, it is a full-time obligation for someone. And that someone was mom in this case. So mom now has hope because Vidiac can walk on his own, which means he's going to school. So it wasn't just the effect on one person. It's transformative for the whole family, which, by the way, in countries like this, like in Cambodia, we have almost 1% of kids that still are born with rickets, right? Mom doesn't have the right vitamins. She's depleted. She doesn't have the iron, the folic acid, the vitamin D, the whatever you need. And so we have all sorts of basic problems like this that we've assumed we've overcome as a world, but we haven't, right? When you're in extreme poverty, there are a lot of basic problems that we still have.
Right.
And
nominal impact, profound impact,
Yeah.
like
100%.
extremely profound.
Yeah, profound.
100%.
I remember one. So when we put our first water system in, we do it a little bit different than other organizations. We don't just like give people a water system and walk away. There are plenty of those that we have found, and about half of them are abandoned, not used, or a small part breaks, and it doesn't work. So if you don't finish that last component of educating the village, having people responsible, having a secondary backup, all of the things, then it doesn't seem to work long term. So we did this. We got it launched. We did a whole village ceremony. We got people excited about it. We told them you can come here for water. It costs nothing. It's free water, right? And it's centrally located, so it's like easier for almost everybody except for the people that live right at the stream. So they're using this thing for just a few weeks, and I'm walking on the road, and I'm going down to visit some of our team members there. And this lady comes out, and she's crying, and she runs up to me and gives me the biggest hug. And I couldn't understand her for a second because she was crying, and she didn't have any teeth. But as she started to calm down, she was so grateful for the water. She was probably in her late 50s. And she said for the first time, her stomach doesn't hurt. And you
Ever?
think, like her stomach always hurts. Like she actually had a child pass away. She's pretty convinced that it was because they were sourcing water from right in her backyard. It was toxic.
Yeah.
And, from stomach aches, and the kid, passed away. And so for her, she never imagined living without that pain in her stomach. And as soon as she switched to a good source of water, it went away. And you think of the ripple effect that has. I mean, the typical village has about 350 families, and they've got 2 or 3 kids each, right? So, I mean, it's a lot of people that overnight, by having a water system put in, it transforms all of their health.
They're dealing with GI issues at least 50% of the time, if not more. And they haven't been able to figure it out. In fact, when we went out there that first trip, I'm like, what's our biggest health issues? We went out into these areas and they were like, our stomachs are always hurting. We can't figure out why. So Wade and I are like, well, where's your water source? And it's not the water. We've tried. It's not the water. We've tested the water. The water's good. Wade and I go walking over, I look in this bucket. I'm like, water's not good. I mean, I can see stuff swimming around in there. So it's just the education. They didn't even understand that. And backing up in Cambodia, they don't even have a word for microbe. So microscopic organisms, they don't even have a word for that. So they didn't even realize that there's things in there that you can see and stuff in there that you can't see, that once it gets inside your guts, it takes hold, it grows. But they were sick all the time. They change up their water. And I think that's one of the single biggest health factors we have is changing up their water.
Yeah.
We actually had to rebrand a little bit.
Yes, we did. We
so
did.
They have a word in Khmer that essentially means clean. But they would say, yeah, that's the clean water. And in English, that sounds like it's been filtered and it's drinkable because you said it's clean water. But that's not actually true. Yeah. It means that visibly it doesn't have floaties or whatever. It's like, it's the cleanest of the unfiltered water. So we actually had to move away from calling our systems the clean water systems, which a lot of other organizations out there do. And we've rebranded it as safety water. Because when you hear safety, you're like, wait, there's unsafety water? What is the well, all of the other water is not safe to drink. This is the only safe water, meaning your health is at risk, even if you're drinking the clean water. And so now they get that in the community. It's like they call it safety water.
Yeah.
It's interesting because even hearing you describe that, I'm thinking, well, of course they would know the difference between clean or unclean and safe or unsafe. But if education, the most fundamental, just learning and knowledge is not present, then how would you even know?
Yeah.
But you wouldn't even think to know the difference between safe or unsafe. It's just like, that's it. That's what we have. So you do that.
Yeah. So some of the things that we're doing fundamentally, it's like, well, most charities are focusing on one thing, like maybe they do water, right? And then that's all they do. What we found is that, first of all, that's just going to continue to drain the resource, and then you got to ask for it again because it's not actually reproducing itself. But second of all, it's like, even if you improved that one thing, yes, it's arguable that their health is better, but they're still not going to school. They're still not saving. They're still not. So this whole bundle deal of like adopt a village, which is a new idea, is taking care of all of the needs that the village has from a very basic level in order to get them to a spot where that progression becomes possible. But it requires all of those things together. So it is a bundle deal where we're doing lots of things, but because which one do you want to get rid of, right? That's the one I always ask, like, which one do you want to throw out? Because they're all very essential things.
Yeah. Yeah, lift and make lighter is holistic. You may be able to knock out one, but you've got other challenges, that exist there. I would imagine just the knowledge and the learning and the mattership, you matter, is so profound for an organization that, for a company, not a company, for a foundation that is impacting them on such a basic level. I mean, is it shocking to them? I mean, is there skepticism around why are you here?
There was.
Like, what do you get out of this?
In fact, that's a big hurdle that we had to cross. And Wade's much better that he speaks the language. And then we have Tang, who is our in-country director. And so there was some trust issues in the beginning. So we had to demonstrate several things for them to gain our trust and let them know that, you know what, we told them Wade's story and his love for the Cambodia. But yeah, it took us, what would you say? How long did it take us to really gain the trust of that first Sambo village? Would you say a year?
I think probably somewhere around there, because they saw that we weren't going away. The organization was still there, and it was growing, and it was doing more. Being able to understand their culture, their language definitely goes a far way. I know that for Tang, his aha moment, he reflects, our in-country director, is the day I gave him a copy of my book, and he actually realized who I was, because he knew the book, he knew of me, but he didn't know me. And for him, that was a realization that, oh, you were the guy that, long ago was helping out with the landmine problem in this country, because they used the photo of my cover on billboards and stuff throughout that landmine policy period. So he's like, oh, okay. For him, he's like, well, he's not going anywhere. He's been doing stuff here 20 years. And it mattered. It actually did something. So let's run with this. But we want to get, the leaders involved. I sit in council with them all the time, from the village wise man to the commune chiefs. We sit with them and we say, okay, we don't do assumptions here. Like, what are the actual numbers? If we don't know them, let's go find them, because we want to know what the problems are. And then let's brainstorm what the solutions are and come up with it together. Because if it's their idea and we come up with it collectively, then they'll vest. But if it's just our idea, we don't do it that way.
It seems like the network, Tang is a key character in all of this, right? In terms of the local network and people and infrastructure that you've created on the ground is a key part to making it all happen.
Yeah, and I'll tell you with Tang, it's
how
actually...
we met Tang was, I don't know.
Yeah, we were pretty much led to Tang, and he's and I've never challenged that my belief in him. He's been true the entire time. He is definitely our guy. To give you a little bit of insight into it, Tang was elected as the commune chief over 7 villages, which is like 10,000 people. And he wasn't even running for office. His people elected him because he was serving them. He would use all of his time that day to go out and to serve the people that were in need. He was cleaning up the environment. He was teaching English for free on the side. He was helping counsel people that were struggling with problems. Like, everybody already recognized him as someone who would help. He just didn't have any weight of capital behind him. He had no money. He was poor. So to be able to go to a guy like that, that's already the leader because of the right reasons, and say, hey, what if we were to put something behind this and really make development take off?
Yeah. We could interview every man in the country of Cambodia. We will not get anybody better than Tang, period. I mean, that guy was dropped into our lap, and it was, I mean, he's a brother. That guy is, I don't know how to describe him. He's just, that guy works incessantly. He's got the best heart. And he was dropped right into our lap. And we could do a movie on that guy, and we could probably do a whole nother segment on how we met that guy and what he's meant to the organization. But truly a unique guy. I've always said, if anybody ever goes out on a trip and they come back and say that they don't like Tang, they are not in our circle. He's just not, you can't dislike him.
Sounds incredible.
When I first started going to his, he just lets me stay at his house when I go out there for research trips or whatever. And so I've met his whole family, and, he's got a bunch of people that stay at his house. And then one night there's this new kid, and he's like, I'm like, oh, who's this? I'm thinking it's another nephew or something like that. And he's like, oh, it's this kid. It's a neighbor kid down the street. I'm like, oh, does he like sleep here often? Because he's like sleeping right over here, right by me. Right? And he's like, yeah, his parents left for the city, and so he's going to stay here until we find another place for him. Just casually, like it's like no big deal. I'm like, oh, like everybody knows he's like the Mother Teresa of the whole area. If you need something, just go to Tang. And so he's feeding them. He's doing whatever. And, I'm wondering like, well, do you ever worry that you're not going to have enough to feed all of the people that are here at dinner at night? He's like, no, goes around, comes around. You just keep giving good. You just keep getting it back.
I want to end on this concept that, this very thing has been on my mind, and it's been on my mind every time I leave lunch with Tyler. I want you to try to capture it economically and then just from a human perspective. What is the return on giving?
Oh, boy. He can give you the economic definition. I can give you the, I don't even know. It goes so deep with me now, and then I've seen how it completely saved Damon's life. Cambodia, dude, he got this freaking tattoo right before he goes on his mission. It's his favorite scripture he shows up with. He goes, Dad, I know you, I don't know what you're going to think about this, but he puts it, I'm like, did you run that translation by Wade? He goes, no, I did my study. I know it's right. I know. I'm like, so I take a picture. I'm like, Wade, what does this say? And it was translated correctly. But that just, again, a quick thing on him. Big football stud, D1 offers all over the place.
This is Tyler's son, oldest son, Damon.
Yeah, he takes one hit, ends his football career. So he's in that point where he's like, oh my gosh, I worked my whole life for this. One play, it's gone. So we decide, let's bring him to Cambodia. Let's see what this kid can do. Or just show him the rest of the world. And like he mentioned, dude, 2 days into that, he's like, what in the, like, seriously, what am I worried about? I lost football. These guys don't even have, they can't even put food on their table. And so to see that change in my own kid where he realized it on his own. I didn't push anything on him. He was out there. And it's funny, he goes, I had to wear glasses for 3 days so you guys couldn't see me crying the whole time. I'm like, really? But I mean, to this day, I seriously owe Cambodia my son, because he saw that light and he was like, oh my gosh, how do I stay involved with Become More? Like so I can't even really put a price tag on that other than that's just my son. We've had it happen with many other people out there. It just does something to you. And so I can't put a price tag on it other than I'll never retire because this is what I want to do till the day I die. So hopefully that'll answer that. But anyhow,
I would say too, the basics, we've been studying, economists have been studying happiness and well-being and its connection to giving and give also income, and we know lots of things about that. We know that there is a positive correlation, especially when you're in extreme poverty, that increasing your income increases your happiness and things like this. But you get to a level, there's a spot, it's somewhere between $70,000 and $90,000 a year, where we don't actually see that beyond that, that there's astronomical increases or positive correlations, meaning that there's diminishing returns at some point. Having the next dollar is like, well, it didn't really improve my well-being very much. But the irony of it is that the use of that dollar to benefit someone else's life somehow does improve my well-being beyond anything that I could spend it on for myself. And that's the magic in giving, is that when my needs are met beyond a certain level, I can continue to improve myself and become more as a person by helping to address the basic needs of others. And at the end of the day, we all know it all goes back in the box. It actually doesn't matter how much stuff I get, how many houses I have, or how much is in my bank account. Because at the end of the day, I die. And the only thing that matters, the only thing that lasts, is the things I gave away while I was alive. That's the impact on other people. So by doing something that can perpetually help at a village level, it's amazing when you sit back and you think, like, because we were born into abundance, if we just simply choose to use a fraction of that abundance to bless the lives of others, and we do it intelligently, and we give where it can help the most, we can literally transform villages on the other side of the planet. That is incredible to me that that's a reality, and it is a reality.
Amen. I think about that question often because I'm an investor. That's what I was trained to do. I did it for 25 years in institutional finance. I was hired to invest organizations' money. And to date, I still can't fathom what an investment in self, get yourself in a good spot, and then as soon as you can, lift and love other people, an investment in others. Those two investments, I can't fathom the ROI on them. The return on giving, I still can't put a finger on it in both literal return, for me to give to others. There is something there. You called it magic, but when I give unselfishly, literally, money to organizations, you called it doing it wisely, in a smart way, the return that I have seen come back to me in businesses, in literal investments that I've made has been 100x'd over my trained investor background has. The other part to that, to Tyler's point that I've seen, is that a really wise guy once said, you can't lift other people without lifting yourself. And there's something in what you're talking about and what Tyler's talked about. The reason I was so drawn in is I know Tyler. I know how successful he has been. I know how good he is at being a chiropractor, a nutritionist, and a health professional. For him to go and spend time and energy on something else says so much to me. That the return on giving, what he's doing and what you all are doing in Cambodia, must be significantly greater. Nominal impact versus profound impact. And I just think what you're doing is incredible. I do. I don't know fully what this ends up becoming and doing, but it is becoming more. People are becoming more in the world because of what you're doing. And man, it's inspiring. Finish, if you wouldn't mind. Anything else you want to freestyle on, go for it. But it seems like that there's some pretty large organizations, including a few that are domiciled in the state of Utah, who are starting to recognize, wow, they've been able to create infrastructure and impact that maybe even we as a large international, church or other organizations haven't necessarily been able to duplicate.
I would say with that, one of the things that we're finding that distinguishes us as an organization in what we're doing in Cambodia is that we're really good at the last mile. Now, what I mean by that is a lot of organizations that have great intentions or resources or even a good plan, they fail to actually deliver on the last mile. So it doesn't actually end up getting to the people that are in need of the resource. But because we're so deeply integrated in with the communities, and we've designed it in such a way where if we were to add something onto the model, which we will as time goes on, we'll continue to develop it, then being able to find the people in need and then to distribute to them is something we're really good at. As a little example, so we got a partnership deal with an organization to help us with some of our prenatals and deworming. And one of their initial concerns was, well, I mean, let's start with 500. Could you possibly find 500 people to get these supplements to? And we're like, oh, maybe they don't understand our model. Easy. You want 5,000? Done. We have 85 villages that all we'd have to do is have the village head from each place say, hey, Saturday morning, it's a village meeting. We're going to bring everybody together, educate them on this new thing, and do distribution right then. Yep. And we've done that many times. So it's that's one of the areas where we're distinguished. We're doing really well is the last mile solutions.
That's with water too.
Yeah.
And that is a challenge that foundations have, right? That the trickle-down effect of the dollar being donated, how does it actually arrive to profound impact?
Yeah.
Versus nominal. Who's taking, right? What are the costs and what's the infrastructure to get it to, to the people?
Yeah, the other thing that really stands out in my mind is we actually we open our model for everybody to see because we want it to be so transparent that not only can you see where your dollar went, come with us. Come out to Cambodia.
Check it out.
Come meet the people that you're helping, right? If you put in water, if you adopt, we had somebody this summer adopt a whole village, right? Their family comes out, and I'm sure they'll be going back to see and to watch it grow. Come meet the people, go actually see where you're doing good because it will also transform you in the process. So we want people to be, so personally integrated and involved with their donation that they know the people themselves on the other side of the planet.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Awesome.
Where can people find out more information?
Well, we've got their website. We've got becomemorecharity.org. You can go there, and then that's got contact information for both Wade and I. And if you want to discuss anything further, you can jump on that. But it'll give you a good background of what we're doing and some of the projects we're up to, and then we're super open. You can contact us via phone, via email, however. We can go to lunch and discuss it more. But we're pretty easy to contact.
Yeah, there's
just right here in Farmington.
There's trip information on there as well. If you want to go on trips,
Yep.
we've got multiple every year.
Yep.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for lifting and making lighter the world.
Yeah, thank you
for
You
having
guys are
us,
amazing
man.
humans. So inspired by it.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.